The meeting will come to order. We'll take up at this point Article 19. To see how much money the town will raise, appropriate, and expend to defray its expenses and liabilities. Chair recognizes Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the Select Board be authorized to raise, appropriate, and expend the sum not to exceed $14,118,434 in order to defray to that extent all general fund expenses for the period of July 1, 2011 through June 30th, 2012, including all highway and Windham County taxes, and the Select Board be authorized to expend, in addition, any sum authorized for a special purpose under any article contained in the warning for this or any other special meeting, and interest at a rate of 1% per month be charged from the due date of payment on any overdue payment of the town tax, installment or portion thereof, and that the town taxes assessed on the grand list as of April 1, 2011, shall be due and payable in 4 equal installments, payable to the town treasurer until overdue, then to the collector of taxes, and that such payment of the installments shall be made on or before 5 p.m. on August 15th, 2011, November 15th, 2011, February 15th, 2012, and May 15th, 2012.
Motion has been made to adopt the raising and appropriating and expending of $14,118,434 to defray the expenses and liabilities of the town of Brattleboro. Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I'm going to yield to Barb Sontag.
Mr. DeGray yields to Ms. Sunday.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The budget that you have in front of you represents a a 3.1% increase in the current tax levy when the FY12 is compared with the actual tax levy of FY11. The majority of increases, the departmental increases, were very flat this year. And the majority, actually, of increases comes with within some of our capital, what we're looking at for our capital expenses. The board, as always, struggled this year with they were trying to come in at below 3% current tax levy. Some of the increases that are in here, there's about almost $100,000 increase in benefits. Most of that is with the, some of that's with our health insurance, although actually working with staff, the board was able to actually decrease by moving to a high deductible health plan and getting the unions, our 3 bargaining units, to agree to that. We actually saved about $300,000 with that change just in 1 year. We have constantly struggled with attempting to keep our operating budgets level, and sometimes that happens on the back of the capital. The board this year looked at capital first because we realized that we cannot continue to ignore our infrastructure. Much time was spent on questioning department heads with regard to what are the needs and why do we have those needs. You will note that the capital plan is in your books beginning on page 81, and you'll see from that that goes from fiscal year 2009 out to fiscal year 2018. One of the operating increases is in with putting the assistant town manager back in the budget. That was a position that I held when I came, and that has been vacant, and it has not been in the budget, so it's actually back in the budget with the understanding of hiring an assistant town manager. And really, as I said, one of the things that's a little different in this year's budget is that the board approved a separate fund for capital, and so we're moving capital out of our operating. One of the ideas of that is so that we can have a kind of, when you're looking at your operating budget, you don't see these ups and downs due to capital. And that was one of the ideas for that. With that, one of the things that I would like to say is that the financial health of our municipality is really strong. We have had, we finished our fiscal year 10 in the black. This current fiscal year, we are on target again for finishing in the black. We have many obstacles known as snowflakes that have come in, causing us some problems. We will be over in our we will be over budget in our salt. So we are working on monitoring those items, and with that, on page 18 and 19 of your books, I have my assessment of the FY10 and you have the FY12 budgets. And what I am very happy with is that I think that we are on a really in good financial shape. I think that one of the things I've said is the idea, when I came in 2003, the idea of talking about post-employment benefits like we just did, the idea of talking about having these really great conversations about what is our fund balance and what should that be and what should we be using it for. Those were not discussions and conversations that this body had, and they were not really conversations and discussions that our select board was having. We are having those conversations. Those are difficult conversations. Those are there is no one way of doing things. But the fact that I think we all are better educated on our finances, we are better educated on how we are spending our money, and what that challenges us is that the decisions are going to continue to get a little bit harder and a little bit harder, and that's what we have to look forward to. Yeah, that's probably why John's leaving, too. With that, I would entertain any questions. I think that over, this year, we will continue to need to look at our services. We are going to continue to need to look at how can we grow our revenue, and that means growing our grand list, and that means finding new sources of revenue. And the board last week, I believe, met with working in conjunction with BDCC and some other regional organizations. They've started looking again and entering into the conversations about what is the economic development that we want in our town and in our region. And I look forward to those continuing discussions over the coming years.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 19? Mr. Wheelock.
Marshall Wheelock, District 2. I would move to amend the motion before us to increase the budget by the sum of $400,000 to a total of $14,518,434, and to appropriate out of the unreserved, undesignated fund balance the sum of $400,000 for the purpose of paying for the fire truck.
Is there a second? Second. Motion has been made and seconded that we move to amend the budget article to increase the budget by the sum of $400,000 to a total of $14,518,43, and to appropriate out of the unreserved, undesignated fund balance the sum of $400,000 for the purpose of paying for the fire truck. Mr. Wheelock, did you wish to speak on this amendment?
I hadn't thought to, but I will. As we started to discuss earlier today, we have funds available. It seems prudent on our part to use cash available to make what I consider a necessary purchase for the town and avoid paying I don't have exact figures, but many, many dollars in interest over the life of the proposed bonds. So what I am urging is that people accept this amendment, and then once this passes, we can all vote on the bond issue with a clear conscience and vote the bond issue down, because we will have taken care of the financial part.
Question is, shall you amend Article 19 as proposed by Mr. Wheelock? Dr. Fagelson.
Bob Fagelson, District 1. I came forward to speak in favor of Mr. Wheelock's amendment. I also have concerns about this reserve fund. I always have. For those of you who don't remember, back in the last century, actually last millennium when you think about it. We had a reserve fund of $400,000 when we had our erstwhile town manager from Colorado, an Amway salesman. And at that time, the town meeting decided that we didn't want to keep such a large reserve fund, and we voted to expend it. Since then, reserve fund has come up again. When I was sitting up there, my personal feeling was to try to keep it no more than $150,000 or $200,000. The reason being is that these, whatever amount of money they have in there, they can have $10 gazillion, and if we have an accident that requires the $10 gazillion, they still have to come to us to approve of that money. So that money isn't there waiting for them to use if some emergency or something else rises. So I think a modest amount of money is fine, but $1.5 million I think is getting a little big. If you look at $1.5 million, that's $210 on your tax bill this year. So,
Question is, shall you adopt the Wheelock amendment as proposed for Article 19? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. It appears that the ayes have the majority, and you have adopted the article as proposed by Mr. Wheelock. The question now is, shall you amend or shall you adopt the Article 19 as amended? Ms. Bouloulis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just for a little backstory, just so everyone knows, the budget passed by a 3-2 vote in the Select Board. Jesse Cortman and myself were opposed. I felt very strongly that we shouldn't be adding staff at a time when we're looking at some pretty austere situations, and these things always end up costing you more than what actually says in the budget, especially if you want to get somebody who's really good. And once you have it in there, it's pretty hard to take it out. So I just wanted to let everybody know that in case you haven't been following all of the budget discussions.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 19 as amended? Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Peter Cooper, District 1. Moss Kaler and Cindy Sterling, our recycling coordinators, sent the members of this body a letter dated March 10th, and I would like to propose an amendment to the budget in the spirit of generating some discussion about that and responding to their letter. And perhaps we can hear directly from them afterwards. The amendment would be that the contract between the town of Brattleboro and Cindy Sterling and Moss Kaler as recycling coordinators be extended for 7 months from December 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2012.
Point of order.
Mr. DeGray.
The body has limited authority in this area as to dictate line item authority in an amendment to tell the town who it can enter into contract with. So that would be like you approving the fire truck and then telling me I have to buy it up the street. That's not how this process works. So you can certainly do this, but you can't tell us who to do it with.
I think, Dick, that you have informed the body of that point in the past. And of course, the Select Board has the authority to spend the money as they wish that's in the budget.
I'm not saying that. You're telling us who we have to enter into a contract with. We have a contract with Mr. Kaler and Ms. Sterling right now. That contract runs for a year. The body does not have the authority to tell the select board who it enters into contract with. That's the point I'm making. I'm not telling you that if there's a sum of money, that is at our discretion how we use that, whether you say you want it used here or not. The board doesn't have to follow what the body recommends. That's correct. But what I'm telling you in your motion here, that you're going to tell us who to enter into contract with, I don't think you have the authority to do that.
Mr. Moderator, can we get a ruling from the town attorney
Well,
on that?
I think what I'd like you to do, Mr. Cooper, I think I'd rather have you at this time at least read the whole proposal of amendment, because it does say more than just the hiring. It says, as I read it, how it's going to be paid for and from where the funds are to come and what the projected date is that you want to have this implemented by. Let's at least put this all on the table at this point, and then we can discuss it further.
Okay, I'll start over. It isn't very long. That the contract between the town of Brattleboro and Cindy Sterling and Moss Kaler as recycling coordinators be extended for 7 months from December 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2012 at a cost of $23,333, pending the existence of offsetting savings in the tipping fees budget. Determination of the offsetting savings to be made as early as possible, but no later than January 1, 2011.
Is there a second to the proposal? Okay.
2011, because their contract ends November 30th, 2011. No. No later than November 1, 2011.
Why don't you read it again, Mr. Cooper,
Okay.
to make sure everybody's got have the dates in mind.
Okay, move that the contract between the town of Brattleboro and Cindy Sterling and Moss Kaler as recycling coordinators be extended for 7 months from December 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2012 at a cost of $23,333, pending the existence of offsetting savings in the tipping fees budget. Determination of the offsetting savings to be made as early as possible, but no later than November 1, 2011.
Okay. Now, we do have the issue, Mr. Cooper, of the fact that the hiring and firing of personnel is decided by the town manager and the select board. And I can't remember of any time where town meeting has ever told the board or the town manager who to hire, who to fire, or what they should do in following out their duties. I think what I'd like to do, sometimes this can turn into a difficult issue, but I'd like to have the town attorney, Mr. Crisp, and Mr. Cummings come up here with me and let the lawyers talk about it for a minute. And so we'll take a 5-minute break. The meeting would come to order, please. Chair recognizes Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. I appreciate your consultation over this. And I have a revised proposed amendment, which would read that the budget be increased by $23,333 to a total of $14,541,767, with the understanding that the body would advise the Select Board to use the funds for recycling coordinators, or coordination, I guess, recycling coordination. And not part of this proposal, but my own hope is that those additional funds wouldn't be spent, but would be found with elsewhere in the budget, perhaps in the tipping fee budget.
Is there a second to that proposal? Okay. Do you wish to say anything further, Mr. Cooper?
No, I don't really, but I am wondering if we might recognize Cindy Sterling and Moss Kaler to perhaps speak for a moment about their program in regard to this and what they hope would come out of this.
Okay. They may come forward. Mr. Cooper, before I forget it, and before the town clerk gets upset with me, you've got the only original of that motion. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
so we were proposing to extend the time for a couple of reasons. The main reason being that July, we felt it would be better to be on the fiscal year, because this was decided in whenever it was decided for this position. It didn't happen until December. So from July to December, it sort of threw the entire system off, at least if you start considering your recycling coordinator situation. And so that was one reason why we wanted to make this amendment to the contract. It doesn't have to be our specific contract, but just the idea that if the town is going to buy into the recycling program that they've invested this much money in so far, that it would be good to get it on track with everything else that's going on with town decisions. The second reason being, as we're moving along and we've completed our first quarter, we were very enthusiastic about everything that we wanted to get done, and we're still hoping to get it done. Probably not all of what we wanted to get done by the November or December 1st deadline. And if we had the extra 7 months, or again, if you add those extra 7 months on, things could be wrapped up completely, so then this could be walked away from with having a recycling coordinator, and I feel the town would be better set up to be a town staff position who's already there, because we were given the job to get data together and to set up systems that then the present town staff could utilize in order to keep the recycling programs running smoothly, the education and the data. Now, we do have the Solid Waste Committee, which is a volunteer committee. They do a great job on projects and data collection. It's just overwhelming sometimes for a volunteer committee to do it all, thus the idea to hire us for a year to at least bring things together and to get the public to a place where everybody understands recycling and is doing it. I don't know.
Mr. Kaler?
I always hate that I have to lower this microphone. If the camera doesn't catch it, next year I'll bring a box, and maybe the people at home won't realize how short I am. I did want to point out a couple things. We gave a handout, and I hope you all picked it up, that shows someone asked at the informational town meeting, as the recycling rate increases, how much money will be saved on the tipping fee, and that sheet was handed out. And that's based on the data from the last 8 months of both curbside recycling, the tonnage of trash picked up curbside, and factoring in the Brattleboro usage of the drop-off at the high school and the MRF. And so in the last 8 months, I annualized that onto a 12-month period of time. And our current recycling rate is 25%. And if it increases to 40%, the tipping fee would be $56,900 lower. I think both Cindy and I, well, I know both Cindy and I feel confident that we will, that not we, but the town will realize and reach that 40% goal. I wouldn't be surprised if the town's capable of getting to 50% and beyond. There are many towns in the United States who are recycling upward near the 70% mark. So I think 40% goal is a pretty low bar, and 50% is not an unreasonable goal. And if we were to reach that 50% recycling rate, the savings on the tipping fee would be $95,400. And we did have a handout of our work plan. Cindy and I are certainly trying to emphasize, as we're about to more actively enforce the town's ordinance on recycling, which is going to be, it's going to be a little shaky at times, and when people go out and their trash has got a sticker on it, or their recyclables haven't been sorted properly, and it's going to be a heavy burden on the staff, on Barb and Callista in the finance office, who is going to handle these calls. And I'm sure some of the calls will be filtered on down to Cindy and myself, and we'll be handling and doing some one-on-one work, and probably more than we realize, with people in education and trying to smooth out their emotions about their trash. And we all have strong emotions about that. But while that's our focus in this first portion of our contract year, is the curbside and getting that up. We have other what we feel are very important things to try to get to, and that's where we realized about a month ago or 6 weeks ago that we both felt that it was almost assuredly that we weren't going to be able to address all the parts of our work plan, certainly not address them thoroughly and to completion, and perhaps not be able to address some of them at all. And some of the important items that I think are very important to the town is to try to work towards establishing another drop-off center in West Brattleboro. The Project COW, which is commercial organic waste, is a great program to get a lot of weight out of the waste stream, and consequently a lot of savings on the tipping fee, because you're getting that wet food out of the waste stream, as well as low-grade papers and soiled papers. And the Project COW container at the MRF is really going gangbusters, and we would love to see a COW container somewhere, one or two other places in town, maybe West Brattleboro. Maybe that can be tied in with new drop-off containers, and then also maybe one closer to downtown. And two other big items is, while the town doesn't pick up recyclables or trash for those residents living in apartment buildings with 5 units or more, they are still residents of the town, and they are still bound by the ordinance to recycle. And Cindy and I have already met a couple times with a small landlord group. I spent an hour and a half at the listers yesterday trying to glean data from the town grand list as to and the data's there, I just got to grab it, to specifically identify the properties with 5 units or more and those with 4 units and less, and so that we can address that portion of our community and do what we can and see that the town does what it can to see that those people have the ability to recycle. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you. Yes,
Question-
oh, yes, and we were hoping, or not hoping, planning, and it may be difficult in a one-year contract ending December 1st, to do a survey with downtown businesses and perhaps town-wide businesses, because that often gets ignored, the commercial and industrial. I'm not sure that we have any intent at this point to address the industrial waste and manufacturing waste, but certainly the commercial restaurants and other retail stores, we would like to visit with them and talk with them about what they're doing. One last thing is, usually there's a bin provided by somebody, the janitors or custodians or somebody, for recycling all the paper that we're all holding today. And I didn't see any today, and Cindy and I had brought an example of all the different kinds of containers that are suitable and approved and will work for curbside recycling. It's just about any kind of container you can imagine other than a plastic bag. And if you use a container such as a cardboard box for your curbside recycling that you like, don't risk the chance that the recycling guy is going to take the box, write recycling on it, get a sticker that we're going to have available before too long of the green chasing recycling arrows, but somehow let Andre know that that's a box you want to hang on to or a container you want to hang on to. But feel free today at the end of the meeting to deposit any papers that you want to recycle there. We won't be shredding them, so don't put anything sensitive in there. And we'll make sure we get it taken away at the end of the day. Thank you.
Question is, shall you amend Article 19 as recommended by Mr. Cooper? Ms. Sundag.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to speak in hopes that you will vote down this amendment. And it's not because I don't think they're doing a good job. It's not because I don't think recycling or reducing our trash volume is important. It's because this position, the idea of the coordinator came last year by the Select Board for $20,000 to transition to the pay-as-you-throw system. We didn't do that, and this body then, when they approved the pay-as-you-throw system, increased that to $40,000. Pay-as-you-throw then was voted on at the general election, and it went to the wayside. We continued to have the vote to hire the recycling coordinators, and we did that. We had to redo the job, though, because it was a different position now. And so we did that. What we have asked in the contract is to get systems set in place. Let's decide what's the data we're going to look at, what's the data we're going to analyze to see how we're doing, what's the education programs that we need, and what is the where are some of the gaps, and how do we get a system set up so that we can then give it to our volunteer solid waste committee to do. I think that I understand that the job gets bigger. The more you talk about it, the job gets bigger. I also have no doubt that the job next March won't be bigger. I have no doubt. I've heard Dora earlier say, when you put a position in, it's hard to get it out. And I look at the town from a big view. And I look at the fact that we have a lot of old buildings. We manage 7 facilities, and we have no operations manager. We have no person who coordinates those things. I look at the fact that we used to have a community development in our planning department that looked at actual community economic development. We don't have that any longer. We don't have someone who's doing that. We have a lot of needs. I think this is important but I don't think I don't believe it should be gone. We should be adding it on for another 7 months, particularly after having finished just 3 or 4 months of service. I think we need to modify our plan. The idea that we use the savings from the tipping fees to pay for this, I appreciate that idea. I think it's a good idea. But I also look at my department heads over there who have, in this budget, found savings that we have then taken away from them because we are passing those savings back on to the taxpayer, trying to pass those back on. I look at last year when we reduced a police officer position, we eliminated a stock clerk position from our Public Works Department, we cut library hours, and we reduced a position in our Town Clerk's Department. And those positions are not in this FY12 budget because I made a promise last year that anything we cut was going to be a cut that we needed to live with. We have, I appreciate this, and I will respect whatever decision this body makes. But if we go to when you look at every line item individually and independently, every line item is important and needs more. So I do hope that the body, with all due respect to Cindy and to Moss, who are doing a great job, with all due respect, and to the Solid Waste Committee, who probably, are all muttering and hating me right now, I hope this does get voted down.
Question is, shall you amend Article 19 as recommended by Mr. Cooper? Mr. Davis?
Andrew Davis, District 3. I was a big fan of pay-as-you-throw, but I'm letting go of that. I think this is a really, it's been an underfunded part of American society, horribly underfunded for decades and beyond. So we're in a situation of major catch-up on how we handle our waste, and so I don't really see the comparison with other departments and situations. The three pieces of successful management of this waste problem that we have, motivation, infrastructure, and education. And we're really lacking in the infrastructure, and we're really struggling with motivation. Right now we're about to go into enforcement of the ordinance. There's talk about having the curbside homeowner compost option. And Peter Gaskell came to the last Solid Waste Committee, and there's a lot of issues around phasing that in. As Moss Kaler said, as soon as we start doing composting, we're going to save a lot of money on tipping fees because that's the wettest. We're basically hauling water up to Montpelier vicinity to dump on the ground. And as soon as we start doing composting locally, we're going to save a lot more money than $23,000. It's been underfunded for many, many years. I was a big fan of pay-as-you-throw. I thought that would take care of the motivational side of it. The town decided to back away from that. It may come up again, but I don't think that takes away the need for education and to stay on this issue. And wow, it's a great thing. The more you know, the more you're motivated, the more money you save. Most businesses are now finding that environmental consciousness helps your bottom line. And it's no different here in the town of Brattleboro than it is in a business saving on their electric bill or their heating bill. I urge people to support this amendment to the budget and spend the money to get a recycling coordinating position lined up with the town budget cycle. Thank you.
Shall you amend Article 19 by the Cooper Amendment? Ms. Stewart?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to ask Ms. Sundag a question so that I'm clear on her point of view on this, please, Barb, which is, what I would like to know is, were you saying that you would like to consider this when you consider the entire budget? In other words, not vote, or were you saying you're not in favor of this overall? I'm just not clear on that piece.
In the budget process,
Right.
this was voted on. It's not included in the budget because it's, you know, that line item was reduced by $20,000.
I understood that.
And so I think that I had no reasons to increase that. The board did not make a decision to increase that and to keep that going. So the decision was made during the budget process to not continue with the positions. Both I and the board were staying with the 1-year position.
Right.
And then eliminating it.
Right. So I guess my question is, because I understood that piece, is henceforth would you, I don't see this as a statement against recycling, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and I'd like you to clarify. Henceforth, would you possibly consider a recycling coordinator?
Not at this time. When I look at the other needs of the community.
No, I'm asking henceforth, meaning in future years.
Right.
Statements were made that seemed to state that this was a long-term view, and that's my point of clarification.
My longer term, unless something would change, I would probably focus more on looking at, if you were going to look to spend money on additional positions or on other, my emphasis would be in other areas besides a recycling coordinator.
Thank you very much.
Question is, shall you amend Article 19 as recommended by Mr. Beatty?
Bob Beatty, District 1. To me, this is a cost-saving measure. I disagree with Bob's analysis in that if you believe what the recycling coordinators are saying, that if the $20,000 is paid out or whatever the extension amount would be, there will actually be savings to exceed that. Sometimes I install boilers. Sometimes I make the argument, okay, you got this old boiler, it's going to use 2,000 gallons of fuel a year. Here's one that's 92% efficient. It's going to use 700 gallons of oil every year. You're going to have to spend some money, but you're going to save money. That's what's going on here. This is a cost-saving measure. It is not analogous to the other situations that Bob is bringing up. And besides being a cost-saving measure, it's also an ecological measure. So I would encourage everybody to do this. Thank you.
Question is on the Cooper amendment. Ms. Manning?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sherry Manning, District 1. I do heartily support recycling and have for probably 40 years, and I was very attached to pay-as-you-throw. And I know that there are a lot of people in this body who voted in pay-as-you-throw last year. And I know that we've spent a lot of time discussing the issues, and I think we all agree the need to recycle and how important it is. It seems that there is some line of confusion, though, when people start talking about it as to whether we need a recycling coordinator to that end. And I heartily agree with Ms. Sontag that I don't believe we need to expend that money any further to create more recycling, that we need to take that accountability within our own, whether it's within our committee or individuals, but to not necessarily put that money into the budget to do that. I really appreciate what Moss and Cindy are doing. I think that there was a lot of confusion, too, in terms of what people were voting on. And I really appreciate this body thinking and talking about it for as many hours as we have the last few years. So I just really encourage people to vote the amendment down and put every energy and movement that you can into educating yourself and helping educate your neighbor in terms of recycling and increasing the tipping fees. And I do probably hope that we go to pay as you throw. Thank you.
Shall you adopt the Cooper amendment? Mr. McCarty?
Scott McCarty, District 3. Mr. Moderator, I don't know if this is germane, so if Dr. Fagelson is here, I'm sure he'll call me out of order. But I did have a question about, you know, this choice that we have. First, I want to give special credence to Moss and Cindy. You guys are doing a great job. And Brattleboro, frankly, we are behind the many other communities in our state in terms of recycling. We could be doing so much more, but when we have to make a choice, you know, specifically when I'm thinking about this assistant town manager position, I'm looking at you now, Barb. Can we live without an assistant town manager, or is it time that we finally filled this position that, frankly, we need? You know, God forbid you got swept away in a flood or something like that. You know, but so is this a position that is this a position that we can live without? You know, if we pass this, would this have an impact on that position? I'm interrogating Ms. Suntak.
Mr. McCarty, I think in fairness to Ms. Sundag, I don't think you should address that question to her.
All right. How about the finance director? How about that?
How about the chairman of the select
Or
board?
I could do Dick DeGray as well.
Yes.
So.
There you go. Good choice.
Yeah. And Barb, if you want to, you know, you can duck beneath your computer a little bit more, you know, too. Yeah. Sorry about that.
It was my recommendation in this budget. It wasn't Barb's.
Okay.
And this was done also with Mr. Corum's recommendation, who was the chair the prior year before we did this. And one of the reasons for, and there were several, was Mr. Corum, as the chair, had interviewed all the department heads prior to the evaluation of Ms. Sontag. Mm-hmm. I had done the same thing last year. For 2 years straight, every department head has said that we need an assistant town manager. Now, as I said at the informational meeting, back in the late 90s, when this position was before us, and I was one of you, I always spoke against it. Mm-hmm. From a monetary standpoint. Being inside, we are very fortunate to have had an assistant town manager, given what happened 5 years ago with our deficit and our financial debacle. Barbara stepped in at a very critical time for our town. She was the assistant. I think I was negligent as a select board member once we filled that position not to push to get it filled right away. Okay. I think we are doing ourselves more harm by not having an assistant. Based upon the complexity, the issues, the projects that go on in town, we are wearing our town manager out, and I would be saying that whether Barb is the town manager or Joe Bislick is the town manager, we need to be careful, and as I said, with all due respect to every department head that we have, there isn't one of them that could step in for a 4-month or a 5-month period to run the town if something happened to our existing town manager. So we are short-sighted if we don't fill a position that we should have filled several years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that answers my question. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shall you adopt the Cooper amendment? Ms. Stark?
Billy Stark, District 1. I can't in good consciousness support this amendment. We budgeted last year, we voted after a long discussion for $40,000. That was it, a one-year contract. Whether it's on the fiscal year or not doesn't really matter, because contracts go in and out all the time. That's not a big deal. The money's there for the $40,000 for the 1 year of work. If you sign the contract and then realize that you can't do the work, then in the grant world, you would ask for a no-cost extension, you know, which I'm sure this body would be willing to agree to. But, you know, if you're saying you're not going to be able to do the job, then I'm not sure why you signed a contract. And I think if you feel like you really can't do the job, then you should withdraw and let someone else do it and, you know, repay the town. But I can't in good conscience vote for another round of money when we've only had you working for 4 months. There's no way I can support that.
Question is on the Cooper amendment. Mr. Wilmerding?
Go over to the other one. I don't see what. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Wilmerding, District 3. I rise in support of the amendment. Over the past few weeks, my wife Carmen and I have attended meetings of the Solid Waste Committee, and we've heard reports from Moss Kaler and Cindy Serling. And when Carmen first moved to our community last year, we went to the MRV, the recycling facility, and got a complete lowdown on what kinds of recycling is possible in our town. And we were very, very surprised to learn how many things can be recycled now with procedures and programs that are in place in our town. 15 years ago when we opened the MRV, I filmed a promotional video in favor of recycling featuring Governor Dean, and that was well received. But I don't see that enough has been done in the past 15 years to educate the public and strongly encourage recycling in our town. I believe that whatever the reasons were for funding the position in the first place, that we are very lucky to have two very capable people in that position, and they have a job ahead of them. It's a big job. There's a lot of scope to it. When you think about it, we have to learn as a community not only how to increase the number of people who are putting recyclables into the green containers that were supplied to us here in the town, we also have to educate them now at source separation, which means having 2 containers or more, with plastic and glass in one container and paper and cardboard in another container. That's one stage of the educational job that has to be done. We're also looking at the recycling of commercial organic waste, which will not go into that green container or into a second container. It will be picked up separately and composted at a commercial facility. We are woefully behind in recycling in our town, and I believe that we need to enter into a campaign mode, and that this moment now presents the ideal opportunity because we have a coordinator position in place, we have volunteers in place, we know the problem, we have people in place to address it, and I speak strongly in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Question is, shall you adopt the Cooper amendment? Mr. Harvey.
George Harvey, District 3. I think that the logic behind Bob Beatty's comments is obvious. We're not going to be able to move money from this type of position to another position and save on the tipping fees. That savings is going to go away. So the idea that we've got other places to put money that are equally important or more important is not really the issue. But I think that this thinking really doesn't go far enough. The issue here has to include going forward into the future, and it's very much like the question of whether we're going to issue a bond and pay the interest rates on that later. Except in this case, it's not interest rates, it's the increased rates for dealing with trash when we have not developed the infrastructure that's necessary even to get the job started, because these rates are going to go up and up and up. We're moving trash way out of this area. We're trucking trash away. When I was a kid, the trash was dealt with by putting it out at the curb and taking it down to a hole in the ground and sticking it in the hole, and it was not a monetary issue of any great concern. It is a monetary issue of great concern now, but it's going to be a monetary issue of very much greater concern in the future. Twice as much, 3 times as much, 4 times as much, and we can start dealing with that by continuing to deal with the question of solid waste appropriately now. And I think that it's very important that we retain whatever skill we've got and not lose it going forward, only to discover a year from now that we have to tighten our belt a good deal farther, and we have to deal with issues that are a lot more painful than pay as you throw.
Questions on the Cooper amendment? Mr. Franks.
Thank you. Tom Franks, District 3. If I may, I'd like to interrogate the town manager. And the question I would have for the town manager is, could you please describe what will happen in the to the recycling effort in the town of Brattleboro in the absence of the recycling coordinators? Because it seems to me we're talking very much as if we do not have these coordinators. Oh, my goodness, there's no recycling. So perhaps maybe that is the case, but I'd like to hear what or perhaps it's the chair's prerogative to answer that, but I would like to know what's happening in the absence of.
Well, I think you answered the question.
Oh, my God? That's the answer?
I don't think recycling is going to stop.
Oh, good.
And one of the things that I did find when Mr. Kaler was speaking is that last year at this body when we were having this discussion, and I can tell you I wake up in a cold sweat with cans on my body and plastic bags over my head. And I never thought I'd be living the nightmare again, but a good discussion. But the recycling coordinators in 3 months increased our rate from 16 or 17% to 25%. How did they do that? They took a survey. They surveyed the Wyndham Solid Waste dumpsters and the dumpster that we have out here. They did a survey and we increased 8 points. And so the reality is we have been probably at 25%. And I don't disagree with what Mr. Harvey says or Mr. Brady. We're not going to be happy unless you get to 100%. But just because you have someone in a position does not mean, unless we start fining people and going to their houses and saying, we don't see your recycling out, we're going to fine you, that may not be an attainable goal. It's laudable, but probably not attainable. So I would agree with what you're saying. People are going to still continue to recycle. And so, because I'm trying to get the moderator's attention, that's my answer to your question.
And I have a follow-up question. I presume there are plans within town management or the board to continue to support or encourage or enhance the recycling efforts and the reduction of the waste stream in the absence of a solid waste coordinator position. Or once this position, because we still have another 8 months to go, as I understand it.
Well, you're correct, and my understanding was poor timing. The court, as I said the other day when called by the reformer, the way that it got started, the timing is off, because what was supposed to happen is that the recycling coordinators were supposed to be here with their 1 year just about completed in giving us a report as to the status where we were. Now, again, we were making an assumption of pay-as-you-throw would be established. My feeling here is that in the end of November, when their contract expires, that they will have policies and procedures that they can give to us, the Select Board, to implement. At that time, we will be in the budgetary process. And at that time, if the board feels that we should go forward with a coordinator or coordinators, then that will be a good budgetary item discussion with this board. Giving someone a contract extension before you know what the quality of work is, I don't think a good precedent to set, no matter how much I like the two people that spoke here before you. So I think that what we hired them for, the contract that we hired them for 1 year, to have policies and procedures in place, and that when that expires, this board will be discussing the budget and the pluses and the minuses of everything that we have to deal with, that's the point where we can say we need a specific person or persons for this dollar amount to continue the practices that have been established by the coordinators for the prior year.
Thank you, Mr. DeGray.
Question is on the Cooper Amendment. Mr. Scholes.
David Scholes, Town School Board. For the past 3 years ago, I was manager of the farmers market when we went through the process of developing a recycling and composting project. And we were able to reduce the trash that was hauled away that we paid for from a large dumpster full to about the equivalent of one garbage bag. And we did that through having access to the expertise and the experience and the advice of Cindy. And the reason I'm saying that is because we hear a lot about reality and people project what's going to happen, but this is a situation where we had leadership, we had the resources we needed to guide us, and we were able to save significant amounts of money in our hauling charges. And this is an opportunity for us to save money to reduce our taxes with a small investment, and I would encourage you to make that small investment. It works, and it will save us money in the long run.
Question is, shall you adopt the Cooper Amendment? Mr. Webster.
Mr. Moderator, I have a question only. John, if you can answer, what is roughly, in terms of taxes, the cost of the additional money that we're talking about here on the tax rate? What will it amount to? Is it $23,000? How much? Well, whatever's on the amendment. Whatever's being proposed by Mr. Cooper.
$23,333.
What? And I don't know what a penny generates, so I was just curious what the tax impact actually was.
A penny creates a little over 100,000. I don't have the exact number. I didn't.
So it's roughly 1/4 cent.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question is on the Cooper Amendment. Mrs. Davidson.
Judy Davidson, is that on? District 3. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment. Last year I was here and there was a lot of concern about the impact of a pay-as-you-throw on people who lived in apartments, people who were of moderate incomes. And my concern is that if we do not have recycling coordinators that can really put into place the infrastructure necessary for people living in apartments who have very little storage space, really implementing the composting so people who are living in apartments have a way of doing that in some kind of reasonable fashion, then we will eventually want to move into a pay-as-you-throw, but we will not have put into place a structure that really enables the people who live in apartments and the people who are lower income to really be able to do a pay-as-you-throw and not be paying the cost. So I speak in favor of having the coordinators for another 6 months so that happens, and I also speak because of the need to really work with the businesses. When I was helping with the survey in December, there were many people that said, you know, the businesses downtown do not recycle. Look at the dumpster behind this building or that building. So I think there needs to be a concerted effort working with the businesses about how they can recycle, perhaps as the way that Cindy worked with the farmers market. So I speak in favor of this because I think in the long run, hopefully we will go to pay-as-you-throw, but we need to put into place an infrastructure that will benefit all of us. Thank you.
Question is on the Cooper amendment. Ms. DeAngelis.
Peggy DeAngelis, District 1. I move to question.
Motion has been made to cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate kindly rise and remain standing until counted. I think, Mrs. Searles and Ms. Fletcher, I think we ought to have a count on this particular vote, please. Those opposed, kindly rise, remain standing until counted. Listen to the result of your vote. Those in favor of ceasing debate, 69. Those opposed, 39. And in order to carry the cease debate, we needed 72. So debate has not ceased, and the recurring question is on the Cooper Amendment. Mr. Sprague.
As many of you know, I'm an ardent supporter of recycling. I'm not, however, convinced that this particular method is going to get us there. I see some fundamental structural issues that are getting in the way of us doing real recycling. Well, first of all, let me say that the numbers, the recycling numbers that we've been getting don't really compare apples to apples. When we have passed select board that took out 20% out of the trash out of the mix, and we still have some of that recycling in the mix because some tenants are able to bring their trash to the central drop-offs. I, however, have situations where I have buildings where 2/3 of the tenants don't drive, don't have cars, and could not actually follow the trash ordinance if it were enforced. The other piece of it is if people did vis-a-vis curbside recycling, I know from situations where people are not even doing a very good job recycling the recycling bins. I have some of the biggest totes you can get. They're overflowing already. So the biweekly pickup is another structural reason why it won't work. So if we're going to enforce it, we're going to have to switch to weekly recycling pickup and pay for that, or find some other way to deal with the overflow. I have been a constant supporter of pay-as-you-throw. I did not vote for it for the first time. I abstained because what was presented to us was sausage. It wasn't a true pay-as-you-throw. This last round was a little better. I did support that half-heartedly. Someday, I would like you guys to come to us with a real enterprise fund, pay-as-you-throw, just like water and sewer. Everybody's included, no exceptions, no BS. And then we will have the motivation that Andy was talking about. The curbside compost is another way that we can take weight, which is what we're paying for, out of the tipping fees. We pay by weight. And if we do those two, we could have the same experience that the farmers market is experiencing, and which is what I do in my household, because I'm highly motivated. But again, my recycling bins that I share with several other households are completely overflowing, and they're bigger than anybody else has. So I speak against spending the money, adding to the budget to spend it. If you guys want to take the leadership on it and actually do the things that we need to do to make it realistic, you will find the savings, and we don't need to add to the budget. So I urge people to vote this down and to lean on the select board to actually make the hard choices and do the smart work to actually make trash and recycling and composting happen in a way that's going to save us money. I'd like to interrogate the finance director as to how much we're paying for tipping fees alone in this mix right
Mr.
now.
Leising is interrogated.
We have budgeted for the current fiscal year $328,000, and we've reduced that to $315,000 next year for our recycling effort.
In hopes that it'll improve the recycling. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. And if we got really serious about it, we could probably knock that in half. So there's more than enough savings to be had there to pay several times what people are, what's being suggested in this amendment. So again, I'd urge people to vote this down, and then to talk to our select board members and urge them to make the structural changes so that we can really do it.
The question is on the amendment proposed by Mr. Cooper. Mr. Underhill.
I feel like Mick Jagger here. Ben Underhill, District 2. I know I don't look like him. I think everybody here is in favor of recycling. You're preaching to the choir, and it is a minuscule amount of money. But when we talked about this a year ago, I think most of us anticipated this would be a one-year position. Kind of fell out of whack with the budgeting process, but let's keep the position as a one-year position. Come November, if the Select Board feels that this has to continue, whether with these two individuals who I think so far are doing a good job, or other people, they could either, God forbid, bring it back to the town meeting for a special town meeting or find $23,000 somewhere else in the budget. But we did not anticipate this to be a long-term position, a forever position, and as Dora said, once you get into it, it's very difficult to get out of it. So let's keep working at the recycling, but I don't think we should continue.
Question at this time is, shall you adopt the Cooper amendment? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor signify by saying aye, by getting up, standing.
We're voting for the amendment.
Okay. Ms. Searles and Ms. Fletcher, I think I'm going to have you come around. We'll do the actual count. Well, it's on the Cooper amendment. I hope everybody's been listening. It's on the amendment proposed by Mr. Cooper. Let me read it. that the budget be increased by $23,333, with the understanding that the Select Board would advise as to whether or not the funds would be used for recycling coordination. Everybody clear? Okay. All in favor, stand and stay standing. This is to decide the vote. No. You're voting on only the amendment as proposed by Mr. Cooper. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Listen to the result of your vote. Those in favor, 47. Those opposed, 59. And the amendment fails. The recurring question is, shall you adopt Article 19 as amended? And that amendment was the so-called Wheelock Amendment. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, kindly rise. Oh. You haven't voted yet, right? Okay. The question now is, shall you adopt Article 19 as amended by the Wheelock Amendment? Are you ready for that question? Okay. The question is, shall you adopt Article 19, which is to raise and appropriate the sum of it's on that sheet. $14,518.43.
No, Mr. Moderator, can I correct that, please? $14,518,434. That's the amended amount.
No, that's what I read, I thought.
There's no cents. We never deal with cents here.
The question is, shall you adopt Article 19 and raise, appropriate, and expense and expend $14,518,434? No, $434 and no cents. I'm beginning to lose my sense. Are you ready for that question? All those in favor, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Where'd they go? Oh. Why? I don't think so. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 19 as amended. Article 20. Chair recognizes Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town authorize its select board to borrow money on its notes in anticipation of taxes, grants, and other revenue.
Motion has been made and seconded that the town authorize the select board to borrow money on its notes in anticipation of taxes, grants, or other revenue. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 20. Article 21. The chair recognizes Ms. Baboulas.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $76,000 through special assessment on properties within the Downtown Improvement District as approved by the town meeting March 19, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to establish and regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $76,000 through special assessments on properties within the Downtown Improvement District. Ms. Baboulas, do you want to speak on this?
I'll let the town manager speak on this.
Ms. Baboulas yields to the town manager, Ms. Sundag.
Sorry. Thank you. This is the special assessment, which is for our downtown improvement district. This has been in the budget. You voted on this for the past, I think, about 3 or 4 years now. And this is one of the sources of revenue for our downtown improvement district, which is currently operated by the BABB, Building a Better Brattleboro. Andrea Livermore, Executive Director of Building a Better Brattleboro, is here. I'm not sure if she would like to say anything about the work plan or the things that they've done over the past year, or what they intend to do in the next year. But if she would care to, I would yield to Ms. Livermore.
Ms. Sundag yields to Ms. Livermore.
Time, I won't reiterate what's in the town report. I had also sent around a handout for people that was sort of an update since last fiscal year, which ended June 30th. Just sort of highlights right now is in the fall we completed with a consultant, completed a downtown market study that we're now working on developing work plans coming out of that market study that'll probably be mostly focused around promotion. The finding of the consultant, who basically was very complimentary and said, in essence, downtown Brattleboro is a world-class downtown. We're an amazing destination and we need to start acting that way. His recommendation really had to do with that, though there are open spaces downtown as far as retail property available, that we don't have a gigantic selection, and given that his thought is just, you need more feet on the street, let's bring more people to town. So in the interest of time and people's attention, I do encourage you to take a look in the town report about last year, and certainly feel free in the future to give me a call. Thank you.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Are you ready for that question? Mr. DeGray.
I've had more people ask me what I'm going to say about this than anything else. I was going to make a motion to reduce that $76,000. And the reason for that is that after BAB brought their budget to the Select Board, they have applied for tax-exempt status, which they can, and not through the town. I was disappointed that they did not share with the board that they were going to do this process. I think when we talk about transparency and openness, that they should have at least shared that with us, and then the board could have made a decision as to say, okay, you have $6,500 in the budget that you proposed for your ensuing year. We may have reduced that number by that $6,500. This is the easiest vote that you make, and I want to make that clear to you, that because the majority of you in this room do not have to pay that assessment. So this is really a no-brainer vote for you. This was a no-brainer vote when we established the district. And no disrespect to BAB, and I have my issues with the town and why they set it up, and it was part and parcel to the transportation center. But be that as it may, it's there. But I have to tell you that there needs to be a much better relationship by the board with our downtown designee group. And if that's BAB or if that's some other group, there needs to be better communication. In my 5 years on the board, we have had, I think, 1 or 2 meetings where BAB came to us. We have never been invited, I have never been invited, really, to come down and have a meeting with them. And so we need to improve that communication. But this body here also represents the people in that district. And the questions that need to be asked, and I always ask them, and I'm always the bad guy. If the shoe fits, wear it, right? But the fact of the matter is that you should be asking as a body, is this working? Are the people in that district who may not want to be a part of that district, how do they opt out? Can they opt out? You talk about forced taxation without representation. That's what happened here with this district, good, bad, or indifferent. Now, in the ordinance that we changed, within, I think, the next 2 years, a vote has to come up by those members, and those members would be the property owners, whether they want to continue the district. That's a discussion that we need to have. We scrutinize the municipal budget. We try to scrutinize the school budget. We never talk about this article. By the time we usually get to it, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd rather be watching basketball right now or hitting golf balls in my backyard. So we don't talk about these things based upon the clock. But this is an important issue that has financial implications. And we don't think about those people because it doesn't affect us. Now, I believe, and I have believed from day one, the River Garden has spouted, and I support, that River Garden is becoming a community space, or has been. And if that is the case, then the DID, the people in that district, shouldn't have to subsidize that whole space. That a portion of that $76,000 should be put into the general fund, and this number get reduced. Because if the whole town is utilizing that River Garden, and they do, there's a lot of functions that go on there, then the municipality should be paying a portion of that which the cost goes to running the River Garden. We shouldn't be paying anything for the DID in what it does with the district, but any cost expended with the public should be paid for out of our general fund. And we need to come to grips with that. People are having a difficult time, and I really am bothered when people get up and go, how much of an impact is that number going to be on the tax rate? Well, the truth of the matter is, you know, the $400,000 fire truck is 4 cents. What's 4 cents? We cannot look at numbers and say it's only a half a penny. It's a penny. Because at the end of the day, that assessment is already on top of the taxes that we've approved here today. People downtown are having a difficult time, just as people are throughout the whole community. So let's start having honest conversations about the DID, and hopefully the communication with the DID and the town get better. And I'm willing to do that, and I've had a couple of conversations with people who are associated with building a better Brattleboro. I want to have a good relationship with that organization. I know you're not ever going to invite me out to dinner, and I'm okay with that. I might not ask you to go and play golf with me either, so we're even. But the truth of the matter is, we need to have a good relationship working together and not against each other. When the organization comes before the town, it wants to propose something. If the select board votes it down, it's not because it doesn't support the organization. The organization needs to understand that. There are a lot of priorities, as we've heard today. And so some things get supported, some things don't. It's not because it's not important. There's more things that are more important than that. So don't take it personal. I don't. I still hold the record for getting voted body to one 8 or 9 times. I keep coming back. So I hope I'm going to support this, but I'm disappointed in the lack of communication, because I certainly felt that BABB should have said, at least at the informational meeting, that we have applied for tax-exempt status. This is how this works. And just to let you know, is that when we vote on tax-exempt status, the town usually has to pick up the municipal or the school portion. What they have filed for, we get exempted from paying that. And I found that out yesterday. Had we had to pay that, I would have been making my motion today to reduce that allotment. So I've said my piece. This is the thing that drives me the craziest. And maybe the best thing to happen to me is that after next year's town meeting, I'll be all done and I can sail off into the sunset and I won't wake up in a cold sweat anymore. Thank you very much.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Mr. Agavi.
I had a lot of problems with this downtown tax when it started. I've gotten used to it. I agree. I don't know much about it. I don't know if it's actually been effective or not. I know it's my problem, personally, is that it's paid for also by all the residents that live downtown who don't benefit. This is essentially a tax for economic benefits, the people who own the businesses. But what I do have a problem with for Mr. DeGray is that I wish you had brought to us a proposal or prepared a proposal beforehand. I have listened to all of your complaints. I'm sure some are true, some I'm not so sure of. But you're asking us, or sort of suggesting, that we defeat it without really a good, solid reason why, or what is another plan that would be preferable to this, how it could be amended or fixed in any way. So sort of I shrug and I say it's a very imperfect plan to begin with, the whole DID, but it exists. It doesn't seem to be doing too much harm. I don't know if it's doing any good. So I shrug and say, well, all right, another year until somebody has a better idea.
Mr. Moderator, can I respond to his question to me?
You may.
I think the last few words that I said, that I will vote for the $76,000.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Are you ready for that question? Mr. Wilmerding.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Over the years, I have supported as a town, granting the River Garden exemption from its property tax, and that was done recently. I'm very, very thankful for that. The reason being that the River Garden was designed ideally as a community center, and its space lends itself most easily to the use by the wider community. I think it's a priceless treasure, quite frankly, and I know that there are people who disagree with this, but I think that it was Leo Berman's crowning achievement as an architect. And its purpose, I believe, when you look at it, speaks for itself. Now, there is an issue here that people may not be fully aware of, and that is that the mission of running a community center is not the same as the mission of running a designated downtown organization. And BAB is I understand, wrestling with that issue all the time. I think that we're doing our best as a community under the circumstances, and I support the amendment. Thank you.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Ms. Baboulas?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to take a little issue with Mr. DeGray, I mean, many of you know that I have had concerns about the downtown district since we started this, although I do strongly believe in the downtown program. But BAB has been asking for tax-exempt status on the River Garden since the beginning. And so while they didn't necessarily inform the select board that they were going through this process, it is something that they have been that they have wanted and needed for a while. I supported the town taking the River Garden and owning the River Garden so that we wouldn't have that issue, and you know, we still could do that.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Mr. Cook?
Hillary Cook, District 3. I think maybe BAB and the Select Board need a group hug. They clearly.
Yeah.
I said a group hug. I really support BAB. I shudder to think what downtown Brattleboro would look like without those resources and the efforts that they have put forth, and it also is with that support from the Select Board and all of us working together. I support. So the money that is being represented in this article, I support, and hope others do too. Thank you.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 21? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And you've adopted Article 21. I've received a couple of messages that we ought to take at least 5 minutes, but I'm going to say 10 minutes so people can stretch and use the facilities. We'll stand in recess until 10 after 3. We'll now take up Article 22. The chair recognizes Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $223,276.47 through special assessments on property within the Mountain Home Park Special Benefit Assessment Tax District, as approved by town meeting March 24, 2007, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to establish and regulate the Mountain Home Park Special Benefit Assessment Tax District for the purpose of paying debt service on the capital improvements to the water and sewer lines serving the Mountain Home and Deepwood mobile home parks.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $223,276 $276.47 through special assessments on the property within the Mountain Home Park Special Benefit Assessment Tax District.
I would ask Mr. Leisenring to speak to the motion.
Mr. Gartenstein yields to Mr. Leisingring.
This article is to provide for a special assessment in accordance with the agreement we have with the Tri-Park Mobile Home Park, or Mountain Mobile Home Park, for the project that was just completed last summer to install or to develop water and sewer lines for the park. And so the special assessment is paid only by the residents of the mobile home park and used to pay the debt service to the state revolving loan funds that we borrowed to assist them with that project. So it doesn't go on the town tax rate. And we, like, as I said, this is required by the development agreement for that project. We're on the hook for the debt. If we don't do the special assessment, it would come out of taxes.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 22? Are you ready for that question? If so, all in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 22. Article 23. Chair recognizes Dr. Schneck.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to exempt Holton Home, 158 Western Avenue, from its non-exempt municipal portion of taxes on its lands and buildings at 158 Western Avenue, Brattleboro, Vermont, for a period of 5 years from April 1st, 2011.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded that the town vote to exempt Holton Home from its non-exempt municipal portion of taxes on its lands and buildings at 158 Western Avenue for a period of 5 years. Do you wish to speak to that?
No, I like when we vote.
Okay. Are there any questions? Are you ready? Yes. Mr. Wilmerding?
Testing. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I noticed that these next three articles are very similar, except that the one on Holton Home, the one we're discussing now, refers to its non-exempt municipal portion of taxes. Is there an exempt portion of its municipal portion of taxes?
Ms. Sunday.
I would yield to Cindy Jerome, the Executive Director of Holton Home, so that she can address a little bit more about the particulars of their state exemptions.
Ms. Jerome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, there is an exempt portion. I'll try to keep this brief because I know it's late. We were founded in 1892, and at that time the state legislature gave us an exemption of $25,000 in value, far in excess of what we were worth then. In 1906, that was increased to $50,000 of an exemption. In 2008, the education exemption was increased to $500,000. So now we have an exemption on the municipal side for $50,000, education $500,000. That's in contrast to what's written in the article. I do want to be clear that if you do vote our municipal exemption, you would not be losing out on $7,779 you would be losing out on $12,702.00.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Ohm? Are you ready for the question? All in favor of granting the exemption as set forth in Article 23, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 23. Article 24. Chair recognizes Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town exempt Hilltop House, Inc., 65 Harris Ave, from its municipal portion of taxes on its land and buildings at 65 Harris Ave, Brattleboro, Vermont, for a period of 5 years from April 1, 2011.
Motion's been made and seconded that the town exempt Hilltop House, Inc. from its municipal portion of taxes on the land and buildings at 65 Harris Avenue for a period of 5 years from April 1, 2011. Mr. DeGray, did you wish to speak to the motion?
I liked what Ken Schneck said. I like it when we vote, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Elwell at the microphone.
Mr. Elwell?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In full transparency, I have to tell you I'm a director on the board of directors at Hilltop House, and I'm making a motion to amend to include the education portion along with the municipal portion. And I realize this is a stretch for the community, but we're not in quite the situation that Holton Home is. I wish we were. But I have to tell you, we've got 26 very fragile folks. The average age up there is about 88 years. We have 10 subsidized residents that are subsidized to the extent of $180,000 a year. And if the education tax of $9,000 plus is distributed among the other residents, it would mean an increase to them of $600 each per year. We're all going to be old someday, and so I would hope that you would look favorably upon this amendment. Thank you.
Is there a second to the amendment? Motion has been made and seconded that included in the article would be to include also the educational portion of the taxes, which amounts to $9,282 additional dollars. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed? You've adopted the amendment proposed by Mr. Elwell. The recurring question now is, shall you adopt Article 24 as amended? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. It appears that the ayes have it, and you've adopted Article 24. Article 25. Chair recognizes Mr. Chapman.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town exempt Rescue Inc. at 541 Canal Street from its municipal portion of taxes on its lands and buildings at 541 Canal Street, Brattleboro, Vermont, for a period of 5 years from April 1, 2011.
Is there a second? Mr. Chapman moves that the town exempt Rescue Inc. at 541 Canal Street from its municipal portion of taxes on its lands and buildings at 541 Canal Street for a 5-year period from April 1, 2011. Mr. Chapman, do you wish to speak to the motion? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 25. Article 26. The chair recognizes Mr. Gartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $131,860 to support human service programs and facilities for the residents of Brattleboro to be allocated among service providers in the following manner. AIDS Project of Southern Vermont, $1,800. Alana Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, $2,000. American Red Cross Green Mountain Chapter, $3,000. Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro, $8,000. Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center, $8,000. Brattleboro Area Hospice, $1,700. Brattleboro Housing Authority Summer Food Program, $4,500. Brattleboro Senior Meals, $6,500. Clark Canal Street Community Association, $4,100. Connecticut River Transit, $3,000. Council on Aging for Southeastern Vermont, $1,200. Family Garden, $1,000. Gathering Place, $2,700. Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, HCRS, Community Walk-In Clinic, $5,000. Kids Place, $2,000. Maple Leaf Farm, $600. Morningside House Emergency Shelter, $6,500. Phoenix House of New England Rise, $3,000. RSVP Green Mountain, $980. Southeastern Vermont Community Action, SEVCA, $7,000. Turning Point of Windham County, $2,700. Vermont Adult Learning, $1,500. Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, $680. Vermont Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, $2,000. Vermont Center for Independent Living, $1,200. Visiting Nurse Association and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire, $38,000. Windham Child Care Association, $2,700. Windham County Reads, $1,500. Youth Services, $9,000. I want to thank whoever gave me this motion.
The question is there a second? Second. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded that the town appropriate the sum of $131,800 to support human services, programs, and facilities for the residents of Brattleboro. Mrs. King.
Mr. Moderator, Select Board members, town representatives, and individuals who have patiently waited for this moment. I would like to ask for an amendment to see if the town would raise and appropriate the sum of $134,860 to support the human services programs and facilities for the residents of Brattleboro to be allocated among the service providers in the following manner. As stated, except for the Vermont Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I have an individual who will address this meeting regarding that. Since 2012, the Austin School has been a silent partner in the Brattleboro community and a source of pride worldwide in the hard of hearing and deaf community. Sign language is our second language here in Brattleboro. Today, I'm asking that each of you open your hearts and give your voice to Colonel Williams Austin, who chose Brattleboro to establish a hospital for the treatment of strangers and local residents with extraordinary circumstances. Keep in mind that the Center of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing could serve you also among the 4,500 that were helped last year. It is very likely that if you were encountering a hearing loss, you would be referred to the Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing for evaluation. Think for a minute what it would be like if you had a world of silence every day, unable to hear the voices of your loved ones and the everyday sounds that the hearing community takes for granted. As you think about that, what price would you pay for having your hearing? Know that single hearing aids could cost as much as $2,000 apiece. Today, you have the opportunity to continue the work that Colonel Austin championed by serving the least capable to give them the help that the Center for the Deaf has requested, which was a total of $5,000. They served over 1,500 in our community alone. Today, you can make the difference in helping embrace that Brattleboro is proud of the premier school for the deaf by saying Brattleboro listens and adopt the $3,000 increase.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to increase the amount of the appropriation to the Vermont Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing from $2,000 to $5,000, and to therefore increase the total appropriation to $134,860. Is there any discussion? Yes. Ms. McKinney? Oh, I'm sorry.
Ann Darling, District 2. I'm also a member of the Town Human Services Committee. Just one point of clarification. If you'll look on page 65 in your book, there's a brief description from the Vermont Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing about what they asked for money for. They're not asking for their whole school. They're asking for a case management program which is for Brattleboro residents only. It's just, I'm not saying pro or against the amendment as offered. I'm just clarifying what they asked for money for. Okay, and I also would like to query the town attorney. If it is can the town meeting direct our committee exactly how to expend the total amount that is voted or not?
Mr. Fisher's interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The overall amount is up for this body to vote on, and your committee was charged with doing it because we have so many of these to come up with the overall amount and how much in each committee. Other towns take these article by article by article, which in the past Brattleboro decided was too time-consuming even for this meeting. So by statute, there is the ability of town meeting to vote such sums as deemed necessary by the town meeting. So ultimately, you could take these one by one, but you have been charged with coming up with the recommendations for this article. So the amendment, in my view, is proper if passed, but then you from a policy standpoint, you run into how that affects your committee and its charge in future years. So it's sort of a slippery slope argument. I mean, I don't take a position on that, but I think that's what needs to be
You might
thought
like
about.
to have a position.
Well,
Question is, shall you adopt Article 26 and the amendment? Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Although it's a laudable amendment, if you look on page 65 and then you find the I think it's on, it might be on page 66 or 67. Page 12, excuse me. You remember when I said I make no sense? I was talking about me. If you look at the request and the distributions of funds, and let me just say to the committee, thank you. When I look at the organizations on the left-hand side, they are all deserving of money. And you will see that in this amendment here is that the Vermont Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing was reduced to $2,000. I think that if you support this amendment, we are setting a dangerous precedent of having each group have a representative come up and make a case for increasing that allotment. It's not that I don't support the organization. This is a difficult job. The committee does a job that, thank you, we don't have to do anymore. We need to respect their decision. I'm sure that they deliberated on each and every one of these requests. Some look like they might have been added to, others were reduced. And so I don't think that it's good precedent to say that we are picking and choosing based upon whoever gets up to the microphone and speaks. I think we need to support the committee. I think it's okay to talk to the committee and say, why did you do this and why didn't you do that? But when we start picking individual line items here for this, it's bad precedent and policy for this body. So I would ask you to vote down the amendment.
Question is, shall you amend Article 26 as proposed? Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Ronnie Johnson, District 3. I was on that committee for several years and had to go off because I didn't have the time. They take hours and hours and hours, and they take it very seriously. I agree with Dick DeGray that we need to respect the time they've spent and the research and emotion and everything that they put into it. They really do a good and thorough job. They call members in from the organizations if they have questions. They bend over backwards to balance helping in these hard times the organizations and also respecting the budgetary constraints. And the danger of having everybody, you might as well not have a Human Services Committee if we're going to just sort of allow anyone to come in and then, second guess what the decision has been. I certainly support the deaf organization, but I think that the committee, one of the things I think that Ann said at the information meeting, and it was true also when I was still on the committee, was they looked first at the organizations that provided the basic human necessities in these hard times. Is that correct, Ann? And so that was one formula that they used in figuring out how much money to grant each request. So I would urge that we, even laudable as the cause is, that we vote this down.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 26 with the amendment as recommended. Mr. Underhill.
Shucks. Ben Underhill, District 2. Yeah, Dick, I think you hit the nail right on the head. We don't want to set the precedent. This group's done an unbelievable job, and we all have our favorites. I do have a question, though. It's somewhat related to this amendment. On page 12 at the bottom, it has an asterisk saying less 4494 pilot FY11. The asterisk refers to the gathering place. But as part of the overall budget, I'm just wondering what that refers to.
Is there anyone present that can speak to that question? Ms. Sundag?
The gathering place does actually have municipal exemption, but they have, they actually pay back through a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, the $4,494. So what that's trying to show is that they're exempt a little over $5,345, but they pay $4,494. So their exemption actually comes to about $900.
Question is, shall you amend Article 26 as recommended by Ms. Kane's amendment? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. It appears that the noes have it, the noes do have it, and the amendment is defeated. The recurring question is, shall you adopt Article 26? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. You may be seated. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 26. Article 27, Chair recognizes Ms. Baboulas.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to assist in funding Brattleboro climate protection for fiscal year 2012, July 1st, 2011 to June 30th, 2012.
Is there a second? Ms. Baboulas moves that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to assist in funding the Brattleboro climate protection for the fiscal year 2012, July 1, 2011 to June 30, 2012.
I'd like to yield to Paul Cameron.
Ms. Baboulas yields to Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brattleboro Climate Protection is a nonprofit organization that works closely with the town to reduce energy consumption and costs for Brattleboro residents, businesses, and town government. It also works to promote energy efficiency and conversion to renewable energy sources. And I'd like to thank this body for their past support for our programs, and hope that you'll consider supporting us again this year.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 27? Ms. Johnson.
Ronnie Johnson, District 3. I would like to ask Mr. Cameron if he could explain to us some of the things that he's been doing this year. His program has been doing this year.
Mr. Cameron's interrogated.
Sure, be happy to do that. One of the really exciting projects we're working on is called the Way to Go Commuter Challenge, which is a statewide program to encourage commuters to get to work using alternative means of transportation, such as biking, walking, using mass transit, and carpooling. And the Brattleboro Energy Committee that I work with has been meeting with around 10 larger businesses in the Brattleboro area since November to develop strategies for signing up their employees for the Way to Go program. We're also continuing a program called Business Energy Ambassadors, which trains volunteers to conduct free energy consultations in areas small businesses. That's in partnership with Efficiency Vermont. And I'll mention a third event. We're teaming up with the Windham Solid Waste District and with Country Home Products to offer a third annual Mow-Down Pollution Lawnmower Exchange program at the Windham Solid Waste District on April 30th.
Question. Ms. Johnson, do you have anything further?
No, I don't. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Question is on whether or not to adopt Article 27. Dr. Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Peter Abel, District 1. I'd like Mr. Cameron to explain more fully the lawnmower exchange program.
Sure. As I said, this is the third year we've held this event. This event encourages folks to bring in their old gas-powered mowers that can be recycled for free at the Waste District. And Country Home Products is providing a deep discount on cordless electric mowers, two sizes, about $150 off the normal price of those mowers.
Question is on Article 27. Are you ready for that question, Mr. Sprite?
Rick Sprite, District 3. I just want to thank Paul for his hard work. I had the good fortune to attend a couple of workshops that he organized that included a lot of landlords and tradespeople and a few homeowners as well. It was a very full room and a very informative day both times, and I thought very well worthwhile. And I look forward to his continued work.
Question is, shall you adopt Article 27? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 27. Article 28 is the vote by Australian ballot, and I think what I'd like to do is to make sure that we all understand what is recommended, since we did take and put into the municipal budget the $400,000 to buy the fire truck. And I'm going to defer and ask Mr. DeGray to give us some instructions without twisting our wrists.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I think for clarity's sake, I don't know how many, has anyone voted? How did you vote? I guess I would ask you to make sure that there is clarity that you can vote to support it. I think that the board heard very clearly that if there's a positive outcome, that your intent is to purchase the fire truck with the cash that you adopted for the budget. So having said that, I'm going to vote in the affirmative. Before I relinquish the mic, Mr. Moderator, thank you again for an outstanding job here today, and we appreciate it.
Ms. Baboulas.
I'm going to disagree with Dick one more time, and that is that you're voting on the bond. If we already put it in the budget, the language of the article is to vote on the bond. If you want the bond, then vote for it. If you don't want the bond, then vote against it.
Mr. Elwell.
Corwin Elwell, District 3. As I read this article, if you vote no, you're voting against the purchase of a fire truck, even though, well, listen to what it says. To see if the town will authorize the following capital improvement: purchase of a fire engine estimated at a cost not to exceed $400,000. And will authorize the bonds. Now, you have to vote for the fire truck and authorize the bonds, or you get neither. That's the way I read this, and I voted yes on this article.
Yes. Mr. Roberge?
George Roberge, District 1. The polls are open for this vote, so we can't discuss it any longer to steer people voting for it or against it, since the polls are open. We talked about it earlier, but now the discussion is over on this. So we can't,
Well, no,
we can't say vote one way or the other because the ballots are open.
I think, Mr. Roberge, but I'm going to defer to Mr. Fisher. My understanding is that that law was repealed 2 years ago, but Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That is correct. They changed the law on that to allow debate even during when the polls are open.
Okay. Dr. Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Peter Abel, District 1. It appears to me that this is a question of grammar and the difference between shall and may. The question to be voted upon will be as follows: shall bonds and/or short-term notes, etc., be issued or not? And shall, in my mind, means if you vote yes, then you will issue these bonds. So you need to vote, in my opinion, no.
Mr. Barber.
I hope Mr. Fisher can correct me if I go wrong, but my sense of this is that we are, if we vote yes to the bond question, what we are doing is we are authorizing the Select Board to, should it feel it necessary, to issue bonds through the bond bank. But if in its wisdom, which we supplied in great quantities to them today, they decide not to, but instead to buy the truck out of cash on hand, please, Mr. Fisher, tell me that that will be legal.
That is correct. You are authorizing the board to go to the bond bank and to take out the bonds if the vote on Article 28 is in the affirmative. But they do not have to. So the Select Board can, given the vote earlier with regard to the budget and the appropriation out of the fund balance, could pay for it that way. So 2 yes votes don't necessarily mean that you're raising $800,000. You're authorizing the board to take these bonds if you vote yes on Article 28.
Yeah. Thank you.
They're not required to do.
Mr. Cummings.
Chuck Cummings, District 1. But on the other hand, Mr. Fisher, if you vote no on the ballot, whatever it may be, the selectmen can still buy the fire engine because we authorized the money to be used for that purpose. So I think, notwithstanding what Mr. Elwell has said, I would vote no on the bond issue, and I have voted no, and I thank you very much.
Any more questions? Yes. No.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Marguerite Monet from District 2. I completely agree with you because, in effect, the people who, some of us who may have voted for that $400,000 coming out of general funds specifically did not want it to be bonded. Okay? We definitely want the truck. We do not want the debt. It's just pretty simple.
Any further questions on Article 28? Mr. Sprite?
I'm a little troubled by the disagreement on the select board. Bob, could you please clarify why it might in any way be a problem for us to vote no on this issue? My concern is that if we vote yes on it, that at some point the select board might feel a squeeze and decide to buy 2 fire trucks or use that $400,000 some other way. The clear path seems to be to vote no, which was advised by a couple of people and advised against on another. Could you?
Given the prior vote on the budget, voting no is not going to make a difference with regard to the purchase of the fire truck.
Right. And voting yes?
Voting yes really isn't going to make a difference either because here's my reason, because if you do vote yes, the board isn't going to take out the bonds. You're only authorizing the bonds. There's a difference between authorizing the board to take out the bonds and actually taking the bonds out. So this is far too much confusion over what I think is a very simple answer.
Yeah.
Vote which way.
I'm planning on voting no on this one, but I think we should debate it for another hour or so first.
Mr. Fisher, does it make sense to say there will be no vote on the Australian ballot since it's already been decided?
I don't think you can do that based on the charter, because the articles on the warning can't be voted to take no action or to pass over or lay on the table indefinitely. So you have to vote. But rest assured, if you vote no, you've already voted to appropriate $400,000 out of the fund balance to purchase the fire truck.
Mr. Webster.
Mr. Moderator, in my about 25 or 30 years as a member of this body, this is the first time when we vote yes means the same as voting no. And I'd like to ask the body here if there's how much more time you'd like to spend talking about nothing.
Ms. Manning.
Sherry Manning, District 1. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just had one question. The only reason we do an Australian ballot is because of the bond, correct? Isn't that true?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now that everybody knows what to do, we'll take up Article 29, to transact any other business to come before the meeting. I've got a resolution here from Mr. Scholes. Be it resolved that the representatives of the Brattleboro Town Meeting support the efforts of the Vermont State Legislature to create a system of universal health care for all Vermonters. Mr. Scholes, do you wish to speak to it?
The resolution is self-explanatory. The legislature has been involved in discussing the healthcare situation in Vermont. I've been able to go up for several of the committee meetings, and I'm convinced that they're following a very useful process, and they're taking wide testimony and really wrestling with the issues. And I believe it's going to result in a universal system that we can afford and that will provide the level of preventative care that could actually reduce medical costs and also eliminate a lot of the unnecessary administrative costs that the current private insurance system includes. So I wanted this select board to express our support, or this town meeting to express our support for the legislators' efforts.
Having heard the resolution, are you prepared to vote? All those in favor kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have adopted the resolution. Have a resolution proposed by Mr. Dimes. Whereas the voters of Brattleboro have resolved that Vermont Yankee shall be closed, whereas many supporters of Vermont Yankee have been concerned for an adequate supply of electric power, whereas people in Brattleboro and across the nation are urgently concerned to develop alternatives to nuclear power, and whereas Central Vermont Public Service Corporation maintains a program called Cow Power for developing investments in renewable energy that can replace nuclear power. Therefore, we, the representatives of the town of Brattleboro, resolve by this writing to be known as the Nuclear Divestment Resolution, that electric power be purchased by the town, shall be generated from renewable sources like cow power, and we recommend further that the people of Brattleboro also should choose this for their homes and that other people choose it for their communities. Mr. Dimes? Yes.
Sheila Linton,
Yes,
District
Ms.
2.
Linton.
Actually, I'm going to yield it to Mr. Dimes because you just read the whole resolution, but I was going to introduce the resolution. So I am in complete agreement with this, and I hope that you will stay and listen. Thank you. Yield to Dimes.
Mr. Dimes.
Thank you. As in our function here, according to the Brattleboro Charter, Article 2, Section 3, we act as a guiding body for the town and a source of new ideas and proposals. That's part of our job, according to the Charter. So in that spirit, we introduce this resolution, which has already been enacted, not in the same verbal form, in Jericho, Vermont, where the town purchases all of its electricity through this Cow Power program. 4% of the people in Brattleboro, or I should say 4% of the residential accounts in Brattleboro are on the Cow Power program. Cow Power is a program of Central Vermont Power Corporation, and it's necessary and advisable to us, for us now, because Brattleboro has voted 3 times on nuclear issues, especially nuclear issues, and we plainly, as a people in Brattleboro, want to eliminate nuclear power. But we haven't yet enacted anything Well, here we are, very much an anti-nuclear town, and we're still purchasing part of our electricity from nuclear sources. If we were to do this, we would have an increase of 4 cents per kilowatt hour on our electric bill for the town. It does not specifically affect what we all do individually. This is just the main part of it is just about what the town does and how the town's offices spend its electric bill. But it would be an increase amounting to $12 per person per year. If you have a household of 6 people, on average you'd be paying $60 more per year on your part of the town's electricity. This is, I hope, not too much, but anyway, since we have voted so many times for nuclear, in opposition to nuclear power, and we want to reduce our dependence on that kind of thing, it's probably just obvious, I think, that we do something like this. I've tested this idea out with 3 different surveys of the public, starting in March last year, and on 2 separate occasions in November and in June. I talked to altogether 100 people. The idea is strongly supported. I asked, would you support a resolution for the town to buy electric power only from renewable sources if it costs 28%, roughly $12 per person per year, more than current rates? And the margin in favor of the idea was 2 to 1. These votes included some people who were from out of town, actually. But the people outside this body on the streets of Brattleboro strongly support the idea. I hope that if we can talk about it, at least we have executed our duty as proponents of new ideas and proposals and guidance for the town. Noting, of course, that we take our guidance from the people. This is an idea supported by them.
Question is, shall you adopt the Dimes resolution? All in favor, kindly rise and remain standing. Mr. Wilmerding.
I've thought about this, and I have a sense that we might not be ready to come to deliberated conclusion about this question. I'd like to move that we table this until the next meeting.
Motion has been made to table. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor of tabling, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. The chair's in doubt. I'm going to ask the checkers to count, please. Those in favor of tabling the resolution.
We need to second the motion to table. And could you please explain it to us as a body, sir?
Well, I assume there was a second. I'm sorry. I guess I'm kind of going to sleep on my feet here. Was there a second? Okay. Motion to table means that this will be brought up at the next meeting of this body. It will just be stayed until a vote is taken the next time. All in favor of tabling, kindly rise and remain standing until counted. Those opposed to tabling, kindly rise, remain standing until counted. Listen to the result of your vote. Those in favor of tabling the Dimes Resolution 43, those opposed 33. So the resolution is tabled until the next special or regular meeting of this body. Are there any other items? The only other thing that we have is the committee to organize the discussion on shall the town approve the establishment of the Department of Assessors will consist of Charles Cummings, Dart Everett, Marshall Wheelock, Leo Burrill, Christopher Chapman, myself, and then 3 experts, Albert Gerard, who's the present assessor, Robert Fisher, town attorney, and the town manager, Barbara Sunday. The last 3 will not be voters. Mr. Ellis.
Tim Ellis, District 1. This is not from this issue, this is a new issue.
You may proceed.
Yeah. Two quick things. One, I'd like to congratulate Arthur Davis on his first town meeting. He's a high school senior this year. And second, I'd like to congratulate the girls' Nordic ski team for winning the Vermont State Championship this year.
Anything further? Yes. Ms. Boubulis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And just to add to that, there's, I think they're still here. Yeah, there's a couple of students from UVM that are studying town meetings over here in Frank Bryan's class, so I think we should welcome them. And I think we gave them a good show. I just want to thank and acknowledge the folks at BCTV, particularly staff, Roland Boyden, Vlasta Popelka, and Cora Trowbridge, and all of the many volunteers that have helped out, particularly those that took on some extra special duties to fill the shoes of Access Coordinator Frederick Noyes, who had a death in the family, and his absence is duly noted today. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. DeGray.
Thank you. Normally this would have been my swan song, but if the charter changes are approved, this board here and the town school board will be back intact next year defending the budget, which I thought was a good move by the Charter Committee. So you will see us at least one more time next March, and I'm looking forward to it. And Tim and I are going to take our act on the road. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Also, I want to make sure we recognize the 2 young ladies who are here on behalf of the deaf and impaired hearing people, as well as our good friend from the broadcast WTSA and our friend who runs the machines here so we can hear each other and talk to each other. Nice job. Ms. Dowd.
Mr. Moderator, I understood the Assessors Committee would be 7 people. Is that my understanding?
Well, that's what they started out with, and now we've got more than 7.
Well, I had volunteered earlier this morning for it.
I know, I understand that, but I'm not the selector.
Oh, I thought you were making...
Well, it was in coordination with the other people who were involved in bringing up this issue yesterday. I guess I got to say that if I'm around next year, and if I do this, I've got to have a little more notice on who's going to do what. It's impossible to try to run a meeting when you're running it secondhand.
Well, then I will...
Does somebody care to make a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Connor, then I apologize. I thought you were taking nominations from the floor this morning. So maybe...
Yes, I did. You were on the list, Kathy.
But I guess my clarification was, how did the list get decided on? The members?
I had a meeting of the people who were involved. Mr. DeGray, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Burrill, and that's the way the consensus was done.
Okay.
I tell you what we'll do. They put me on because they know I'm retiring from practicing law, and they were afraid I was going to get into trouble. So they said, you take the job. I'm going to give you my job.
No.
You're on.
No.
Mr. Webster moves we adjourn.
What?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.